Hey, it's Scotty, and I had an interesting thought which I want to run by you guys, and it has to do with guinea pigs and the experiences that we have with them and what that actually says about us, what it says about you. So oftentimes in the rescue world, people surrender their piggies and they say they just weren't right for us. And a lot of times they might say, oh, they were stinky, or, we just got too busy. There's a number of excuses why they need to surrender their piggies. And I will say, before I get into this, that there are also a number of really serious and legitimate reasons why rescues and shelters will always need to exist. People who love and take great care of their piggies go through hardships, medical emergencies. There are often natural disasters. There are many different situations why somebody might have to surrender their piggies through no fault of their own, and it even breaks their heart when they have to do it. And so it's very serious and it's heartbreaking, and it's very important that rescues and shelters exist for that reason. But I was thinking, what does having guinea pigs and the way you take care of them say about you? And it got me thinking that your experience with guinea pigs is actually a reflection on you and your personality, and on me and on all of us. So I compiled a list here, and I'm not going to be able to memorize it, so I'm going to be referring to this little page here. But I came up with a couple sort of personality traits and how that may translate to the way you approach guinea pig care. And some of them are negative and some of them are positive. So just like many things in life, the way we approach things, the results we get often are a reflection of ourselves. So for instance, if you are a lazy person, then you might end up... So we can look at this two ways. We can either look at the personality trait that you have ends up predicting, or so we can look at this two ways. Either the personality trait that you have ends up determining how you care for your piggies, or you can use the reverse and say the way that you care for your piggies is a reflection on your personality. So for instance, the first one that I came up with here is lazy equals a dirty cage. So if you're a lazy person and you just don't want to do things that you're supposed to do, that you should do, or you put things off, then you might end up with a dirty cage. And likewise, if you procrastinate, and you have piggies that are sick, they may end up getting worse because you say, oh, I'll see how they are tomorrow. And meanwhile, they are getting sicker and sicker and you haven't made an appointment to the vet. What else do I have here? If you are an anxious person, then maybe that translates to being a helicopter parent when it comes to your piggies. You are always worried about them. You're constantly messing with them, and every little thing that they do, you overanalyze. And the last one that could be considered negative that I wrote down, and I'd love to hear what you think, is suppose you're that kind of person, and this is more of like a sitcom character archetype than maybe actually a real person. I would hate for someone to call me a know-it-all, because I certainly don't, and I hope to continue to keep learning and changing my opinion if new evidence comes to light, changing my recommendations based on what I learn. But suppose you were a know-it-all, then you might be following outdated practices. For example, if you had guinea pigs when you were younger, and if you are older, if you are, in your 40s or above, or even, at any age, if you had piggies 5-10 years ago or more when I was a kid, which is going on years ago, back in the 80s and 90s, we did things much different. It was completely acceptable and normal practice for people to have small animals in aquariums. And of course, we know now that aquariums have pretty bad airflow, and it's not something that we recommend. But people might be stubborn and say, oh, you know, this is how I did it back then, and so that's how I'm going to do it now. And you could argue the merits of social media and the internet in general, but one thing that it has positively given us is this wealth of information and sometimes misinformation. I just made a video that I'll put at the end here that is about who can you trust, what sources can you trust, and how do you know that the information that you've been given is correct. So watch that video. I'll put a link to it at the end. But if you think that you know everything and you're not willing to continue to learn, then you might be doing some things that are no longer recommended that may in fact be harmful to your piggies. Okay, we've been a little critical. We've been a little bit on the negative side of negative personality traits. But what are some positive traits? So on the other hand, if you are someone who is a very generous and giving person, then that is reflected in the way you spoil your piggies. You know, you chop up multiple different kinds of veggies. You give them these beautiful salads. You're sprinkling herbal blends into their hay. You've given them an incredibly beautiful cage with lots of space and really interesting and stimulating things in their cage for your piggies to explore and enjoy. And suppose you are a kind person, then you might be always loving on your piggies. You know, you walk by and you can't resist the urge to pick them up and give them a kiss, or at least scratch their nose, their ears, just show all kinds of affection, you know, and you look forward to holding them and really just having that beautiful positive exchange. So if you are a very responsible person, and I hope that we all have a certain level of responsibility when it comes to taking care of our pets. That's not something that you learn on the job. You know, parents come to the rescue and they say, we're getting these guinea pigs to teach our kids responsibility. No, sorry, that's one of my pet peeves. You got to have, somebody has to have that responsibility in place, because if you're learning responsibility and you fail to learn that lesson, who's going to suffer? It's these piggies, and it's not fair to them. But let's face it, some people are more responsible than others. Some people, you know, there's always an acceptable amount of procrastination, but some people are always, you know, that person who's so responsible. They're so on it all the time. And that might translate to always keeping up with your chores. The cages are always spotless and spot cleaned. You are setting annual vet visits. You at the drop of any sign of illness, you're making an appointment. And maybe that sign of illness doesn't turn out to be anything, and you cancel that appointment. That's fine. That's fine. But I think there might be many ways as it relates to guinea pig care where being a very extra responsible person translates to a really high standard of care for your piggies. So what if you are a very friendly person? Now, I could have done this the opposite. I could have said, what if you're somebody that you always walk by and you're talking to your piggies and you're telling them about your day, and you're always taking pictures of them and sharing them on social media or with your friends or family, and you're just such a friendly person that every living being that you interact with, you approach them with kindness and an open heart, and you just love and savor those interactions. I could see how a friendly person might develop a extremely deep bond and relationship with their guinea pigs, and that might actually translate into your guinea pigs taming much quicker and having a sort of exceptionally trusting relationship. You know, guinea pigs are not dogs, they're not cats. They are prey animals and they are their own thing. And of course, they all have individual personalities. But I tell people, if you walk into the room and your piggy's laying down and they look at you and they don't even get up, that's actually a good sign. That means that they trust you. It means that they're not afraid of you. It means that they're used to your presence and it doesn't bother them. Now, of course, if they come running up and they're begging like this, that just means they see you as the bringer of treats, which isn't a bad thing either. What if you're a very creative person? Well, then maybe you're the type of person that is always decorating the cage in like interesting fleece patterns, and the cage, maybe you have a really cool layout, like maybe you have a racetrack and a bridge, and you've got all these really interesting things. Maybe you even designed a hay rack. You know, how does your creativity end up manifesting itself? Bibi, leave me alone. I'm not gonna promote your t-shirt if you don't stop pulling on my earring. You know, I was thinking we're getting into the Halloween season first, and then before you know it, Thanksgiving, and then the holidays. Bibi, stop. Here, you get up here. Okay. Here, there we go. And we get into this is probably the first time that Bibi's ever been on my head, but believe me, half of the day I'm walking around with this bird on the top of my head, and he helps me supervise when I'm doing my chores. So, okay, before I was rudely, let's back up here, before I was rudely interrupted by this bird, we're getting into Halloween spooky season, and I've been seeing a lot of really cool cage setups related to Halloween spooky themes, orange and black, and we've got like bats and ghosts, and of course you can find really cool fleece and really cool spooky patterned cuddle sacks and tunnels and things like that. And if you're a creative person, maybe you've been decorating your cage for the holiday season. So that could be one way. Or maybe you're creative and so you're making these really delicious and exciting looking treats or salads, or I saw somebody they made, was it burgers or something, obviously out of veggies, for their piggies. But if you're creative, how does that manifest in your love and care for the way you interact with your piggies? Again, in the comments, let me know what you do. And also on Instagram, you can tag me with any of pictures that illustrate these ideas. And based on what you show me, I'll get not only to see the creative and the love and all the cool things that you're doing for your piggies, but that will give me a little bit of insight into who you are. So if you tag me, when I go on Instagram, I can see who's tagged, tag me in posts, and I'll try to share those in my stories. So I really look forward to reading your comments and seeing what your guinea pig care style says about you. And I'm going to put that video about who can you trust, how do you know which sources of guinea pig care information you can trust, and the best way to go about finding trusted sources. So check that video out, and until next time, thanks for watching.